Welcome to GydeBites. I'm Prasanna, your host. If you're leading AI in financial institution today, you're probably dealing with three things: legacy systems, regulatory environment and pressure, and rising expectations. Agentic AI promises to cut through few of these things, but only if it is done right. And so, what is this right actually look like? Let's break it down with Mr. Deepak Konale. He's a partner, agentic AI and data transformation at Cognizant. He has over 30 years of experience. He leads agentic AI and digital worker transformation teams for tier one financial services firms. He has also built and scaled high performance AI teams. He has developed patented AI solutions, enabling institutions to evolve from siloed models to coordinated and decision making systems. Deepak, welcome to GydeBites. It is so nice to have you here.
Thank you, Prasanna. And thanks for having me on this podcast.
All right, Deepak. So let's get it going. What are the key use cases that you see today in agentic AI, of agentic AI in financial services?
Yeah, I'll break those down, Prasanna, in three different areas and go in the order of priority where the financial services are focusing based on the value that they are seeing. The first type of use cases are essentially around the back office or operations transformation. The key value driver is essentially optimizing their existing operations and improving client experience. And there, the type of use cases are essentially things like client onboarding, doing AML KYC at scale. And those use cases essentially are enabled by things like digital worker as an example, where there's a human plus AI team that's working on these back office transformations. The second type of use cases are essentially revenue driving or competitive differentiators, where a lot of financial institutions are sitting on a vast amount of data that's untapped, since a lot of that data used to be unstructured. There, the type of use cases we are seeing are things like creating a client meeting package at scale, personalizing the advice that you provide to the client, figuring out, how do you compete by integrating yourselves into the overall ecosystem. And the third set of use cases are all around risk reduction. Typically, you wouldn't think agentic AI is doing that, but we are seeing a lot of benefits from applying this to AML KYC, to do enhanced client onboarding, fraud detection. And there's actually a number of Fortune 500 companies that have been starting to report in their 10K the type of benefits they're seeing from especially the risk and operations use cases, and how that provides an ROI to the organizations.
Yeah. So I was about to sort of go to the benefits of it. So let's just double click. What do you think the benefits are for these Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 financial institutions from these use cases, right? So, because a lot of times what people are sort of worried about or are saying that AI is just reducing the jobs, it is taking away the work of what people are doing. But what are like business benefits that these institutions can expect from these?
There's a large number of benefits from doing agentic AI, right? I think first and foremost, in the context of the operational use cases I talked about, a lot of financial services employees essentially spend a lot of their time kind of doing mundane activities, administrative activities, and this enables them to focus on their core competencies and things like talking to the client. I mean, that's extremely important, but most of the advisors do not get time to do so, just given the fact that they're spending most of their time doing administria or, paperwork essentially. So that is a great benefit. So kind of doing more with less. Second part is, they can improve their top line, right? By leveraging this data in a more efficient way and kind of more contextual way, right? I think there is a huge field of context engineering that has emerged to provide right context at the right time and making the right decisions based on that context. And that enables you to compete better and improve your top line, especially if you're competing with somebody who's not using the data as effectively. You stand to gain benefits on that side. And number three is agentic AI allows you to audit almost 100% of decisions that are being made, and the communications has been done through a maker checker type of model. And that reduces the reputational risk, enhances the reputational risk, reduces the regulatory concerns in terms of fines and MRAs that the institutions face. So there's benefits across the entire value chain.
Yeah, makes sense. So the next thing that I wanted to sort of touch base is on these models and platforms and tools, right? Because if you go on X or previously Twitter, you feel like every day there is so much happening in the space of AI that you cannot really keep a pace with what's happening, what is new, what is working, what should be adopted, and so on. So, what are some of the AI models, forms, tools that you have used to deliver these use cases? If you could name a few.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few, right? I think financial services institutes typically are regulated institutes. They have their enterprise stack. Those stacks are dominated primarily by kind of the big names that you see in hyperscalers, things like Amazon and Microsoft, and each one of them have been investing quite a bit in this capacity. What we are also seeing is emergence of cloud recently based on their Opus 4.6 and the fact that it's getting integrated into the DNA of these organizations. I've grown through the ranks for the last 25 years using different tools, even in data science, data management, and it's some of those things are still relevant, just given the fact that machine learning, neural network kind of forms the foundation of how the LLMs actually work. So those tools continue to stay relevant. And what we are seeing is there is a distinction between those use cases that require more deterministic type of approach, more regulated use cases where data science is being used, and where more probabilistic approach that LLMs provide better benefits essentially. So the stack is very different. If any of you are interested, I think there is a lot of research done on the agentic AI stack, all the way from infrastructure layer to the application layer, and how these things integrate at various levels. You will think of a foundational layer, which is basically foundational models where LLMs play a huge role, but what's emerging is kind of the specific applications on top of that, application specific LLMs and industry specific LLMs as we go forward.
Yeah. And you mentioned something about the risks, that how these financial institutions can reduce the risks and fines and everything. But what are the risks that are involved when adopting the agentic AI? What should they be worried about?
Yeah, I think so. That's a great question. Just given financial institutions are regulated entities, the risk of having a wrong decision is pretty high, or the impact of wrong decisions is pretty high. So the risk that you should consider essentially, number one, it's about LLMs are inherently probabilistic and black box type of tools given the neural network background that they provide. So how do you evaluate the outcomes and make sure those outcomes are within bounds? That comes with the hallucinations. It tends to hallucinate. So the feedback loop, having right controls in place so that the right use cases leverage the right set of technologies, and having a AI governance council that integrated into overall risk framework for the organization itself in terms of risk appetite. What use cases should you actually follow? Those are some important considerations in terms of managing risk. And last but not least, there is a huge risk. Today, the organizations run because this technology in everybody's hands today. Cloud, for example, everybody's using it. Copilot, everybody's using it. Responsible use of those technologies and providing a safe sandbox so that you can continue the innovation while you can manage the risk has been an evolving area, just given the fact that the employees are, typically tend to run ahead of the enterprise technology teams, and they are starting to use this technology in novel ways.
Yeah. So sort of everyone uses the tools outside of the work, and when you sort of want to use that in a enterprise environment, the IT team or the network team says that, hey, this is not approved, and so we hear those kind of things almost every day, right? So Deepak, what I want to touch base next was something you mentioned earlier, that when using these agentic AI systems or agentic AI or AI models and so on, the governance, the guardrails and all that is very important, should be in place. Council of models kind of concept is evolving now. So how does building, deploying, or managing these agentic AI systems is different from the traditional systems, because traditional systems have evolved from waterfall models and agile methodology and so on and so forth. Like there has been a standard set out to how do you go about developing, let's say, a web app or a mobile app and so on and so forth. But how does it differ when you want to deploy these agentic AI systems?
Yeah, there's vast differences, I would say, especially for somebody like me who has grown through the traditional mechanism and now starting the evolution of what's possible, the scale at which it's possible, the amount of acceleration it provides, the type of impact it can have on the organization, right? Traditionally, what we used to have is parts or like standard or software packages you will buy or develop using Java or whatever SQL type of things. They are only capable of doing certain things within a certain bound. They were constrained. In terms of the agentic AI systems, they can actually act, think, create a feedback loop, and go back and refine their actions. That unlocks a lot of productivity potentials, but that also means you have to be very thoughtful and provide the right context for the systems to work on. So I'll just give you a quick examples of how the entire what we used to call a SDLC before, right? What you mentioned, the software development lifecycle, which is waterfall, agile. Those things were built on. We have some sort of problem to solve. There's a BA who's going to go create some sort of requirements document. He's going to hand it over to some developer, and then there's a project manager. Then there are a set of developers, there's a set of testers, and there's a lot of handoffs, right? And then there's going to be testing all the way at the end, and like everything is more predetermined in terms of how this will flow.
As you're speaking, I kind of miss that environment already.
Yeah. I mean, so it was predictable. I mean, I think it was predictable. You knew what you were building towards, and you also had a lot of, and that's where there was a lot of lag time, right? From the time the idea generated to the time you get to production system in production, you'll typically see, 6, 9, 12 months, even multi-year roadmaps that were being developed for complex systems. Now, what's happening with agentic AI-based systems, and I'll give you some examples of human plus AI type of approach, and we call this a product development lifecycle, not a software development lifecycle, because essentially what you try to do is create an AI-based product that can be leveraged on an ongoing basis. And in case of agentic AI development, right, the input to these agents is extremely important. And so determining the right context upfront regarding what's the problem you're trying to solve, what does good look like in terms of outcomes, who's going to act on it, those type of context is extremely important. And that's emerging as one of the key principles of developing the software, like spec driven development, providing those specifications upfront. And those specifications are not just a written document by a given business analyst who understands certain set of problems. It actually context, right? How does the process actually operate today? So what we are doing today is we are creating human plus AI type of teams that can work, that can play the roles of each one of these folks at scale. I'll give an example. There is a software framework that actually acts like a product owner or a product developer. Instead of going to a workshop and creating all these inputs from all the folks on how the existing process works, it will essentially observe how humans are doing their work today, try to figure out, what does it mean in terms of agentification. Then you can seamlessly have that agent talk to the software architect agent, say, what type of solution will you develop? What type of agents will you develop? What guardrails are required? What does good look like? And then it will break down into other developer agents who can be spawned off to essentially develop or code to this using Cloud Code or, some of the other methodology like Windsurf and others. And then there is a maker checker model at the end where there is an independent developer who is going out and reviewing the outcomes coming from the development, matching it back to the initial specifications, using a different set of LLMs and making sure that it's catching all of the vulnerabilities like you saw in case of Cloud 4.6 type of approach. And if you think, then there is a whole human in the loop. The role of a software developer, software architect is not changing in a way. Instead of they are essentially evaluating the outcome. What they are also doing is making sure that those guardrails are followed. So What I say is the software development lifecycle is turning into more of this product development lifecycle. There's a human plus AI team that's evolving. Time from ideation to actually getting a production based systems is accelerating significantly. And then last but not least, the whole maker checker model, which basically allows you to have quality built into the software that's getting developed, is very important. A lot of the hyperscalers are and financial institutions, frankly, are starting to report what percentage of their code is actually being developed by human plus AI teams. I mean, I would say that's a very crude method of figuring out what's the impact, but I think the real impact is in how quickly you can deliver the value. How do you actually create these human plus AI teams? And then there are parts of this ecosystem that are actually getting fully autonomous, right? As an example, is a financial institution that deployed a bot that's continuously tracking the security vulnerabilities in their code and suggesting enhancements so that they can stay ahead of the curve on an ongoing basis. And that's fully autonomous. It's almost like a digital worker that's doing that security check. So number of changes. I mean, this is probably the most change I have seen in the ecosystem in my 25 years in the last 2 years.
Yeah, that was awesome, Deepak. Deepak, thank you so much to break it down, because that's one of the sort of very common misconceptions or the lack of understanding is out there in the market today. That, hey, yes, we want to use AI, but how does it differ from the traditional software systems that we were developing? So thank you so much for breaking it down. We'll move to the next section of this podcast real quick. So, Deepak, we always ask our guests to leave our listeners with one piece of practical advice. What would you like to share with them?
Be a continuous learner in this case. Nobody has all the answers for AI, agentic AI. Just being able to learn on an ongoing basis and build upon your existing knowledge will continue to make sure that your skills remain relevant and you can make the maximum impact, regardless of whichever stage of career or whichever profession you are in.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So before we sort of wrap up, there is a short rapid fire round. Deepak, just share the first thing that comes to your mind. One unpopular opinion about agentic AI.
Well, we all know it. To replace my job.
One habit that slows down adoption of AI in enterprises.
Not thinking about the people aspect of it. There is a huge change management, regardless of the system that you deploy. Traditionally, in case of software, it was much more easier, but agentic AI is a lot more disruptive.
One skill that teams should build to work with AI agents.
How to think structurally and how to think about the context, the why behind everything. Because now what the agents are able to do is figure out the how. If your skills need to evolve to understanding more about the why and the what, that will help you collaborate better with the agentic systems.
One thing or one decision that you will never delegate to an AI agent.
Well, I delegate a lot to the AI agents, including my travel planning nowadays. But one thing I wouldn't delegate is just thinking about empathy, human connection when you actually need, even if I'll just give an example, even if I do the travel planning, I always make using cloud or anything else, I always make sure that I have something fun for my young daughter to do every day of that travel plan. And that's not something cloud can replicate for me.
Yeah, of course. One trend that you're seeing or AI-led decisioning leaders should watch very closely.
That's where I come back to kind of this whole concept of a digital worker and digital twin. That's and a context-driven development, right? So essentially, how the humans operate is based on the context we have in our head, right? Essentially, we've been groomed to think a certain way. We act on the basis of certain decisions, and it's what we call a role-based automation. So being able to capture all of that context and being able to generate the right agents to actually leverage that context and make right decisions is extremely important. That's where the competitive differentiation lies, frankly, because as we go forward, as we've seen in prior waves of internet or everything as well, foundational models get commoditized, things get commoditized pretty fast. What we think are things that are differentiators. What continues to differentiate is the context you have, the data you have, and how you use it to actually drive decisions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. These were very sharp and crisp responses, Deepak. Thank you so much for that. And we had a very insightful conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. You have given a lot of practical perspective on how to go about Agentic AI, the use cases and tools, and so on and so forth. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Prasanna. Thanks for having me, and good luck on this podcast.
All right. And to everyone who is listening, if you find this valuable, do share it with your peers. And I will see you in the next episode. Thank you once again.